Is the day that we're celebrating Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and I just want to explain a little bit the history of this day, just with the introduction that there are a lot of days on the calendar throughout the year of different events that happened, events that are reason to celebrate, different miracles that happened, different times in history, and they're all very important, very precious. But naturally, this is a little bit different because this is something which happened, we experienced, we were part of it, at least people in my age bracket, and it's something which we felt on a very personal level. So let me tell the story and try to explain things as I go along. First of all, I've heard this question, so that's why I'm even bringing it up. That people ask if this was a miracle that the Rebbe had this severe heart attack and his life was saved. So I can understand years ago that people are celebrating it and celebrating every year that goes by that he continues to be healthy. But what's the point in celebrating it now? And the answer is, well, all the holidays we celebrate are things that happened in the past. Yidden went out of Mitzrayim over 3,000 years ago. And Hanukkah happened over 2,000 years ago, and Purim happened over 2,000 years ago. And one of the reasons for that is because even though this was something that happened a long time ago, but the benefit and the impact that it had lasts forever. That's on a level that we can relate to. And also, one of the things we learn about in Chassidus, we spoke about this a lot during the month of Tishrei, is that according to Chassidus and Kabbalah, when there is a holiday, special day on the calendar, let's say like a day like Purim or a day like Hanukkah, we're not only celebrating the past, but anytime anything happened on a certain day, whenever that day comes around again on the calendar, whatever happened the first time, physically we don't see any changes, but spiritually, whatever occurred the first time reoccurs again every single year in those 24 hours. So when there was a miracle down here, that means that something happened up there in the spiritual realm. That something happens every single year on the 25th of Kislev, every single year on the 14th of Adar, every single year on the 15th of Nisan, and so on and so forth. So therefore, it is something which lasts forever. And that's why we celebrate it. So let me talk a little bit about just technically, what happened. To us, this was a big shock because the Rebbe was physically strong. We know a number of the Rebbes of Chabad were physically not strong, they were weak. We know the Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, had a heart condition since he was very young. He had a lung condition, and many stories about him and with how he struggled with his health. He passed away when he was 54 years old, young age. Rabbi Marash, which was the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, also had different health issues. He passed away when he was 48. The Rebbe Rashab, which is the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, also had various health conditions. And when he was 28 years old, the doctors already told him that he's not going to make it. And he wrote a will. It's called Chanei Chunar. We have the document of the will. And then a second time, when he was 47 years old, again, the doctors told him that he's not going to pull through. And miraculously, he lived again for another 20 years. But there was that weakness. The previous Rebbe, who went through the persecution in Russia, as we all know, the Russian jails. When he came to America, you can see in video, he's already in a wheelchair. He was only 60 years old at the time. Our Rebbe was very strong physically. The schedule the Rebbe had is a schedule that is beyond human comprehension. And I just recently saw an article of someone who was a doctor, and he was connected to a certain Chabad community in Israel, and he was inspired to come here for the month of Tishrei. And he came back, and they sat together, him with the community, and they asked him to speak a little bit about what he saw, what he heard. He wasn't really a chassid. He didn't understand the sikhs so much, or the maimorim. He said, I can tell you what I saw as a doctor. There's no way that I can explain how a human being could keep such a schedule and go on. That was in the month of Tishrei. But on a regular basis, the Rebbe never took any vacation, never. The Rebbe was always there every single day from 10:30 in the morning till late at night. Went home for a brief break for about an hour or 3/4 of an hour. 3 nights a week, the Rebbe met with people one-on-one, started at 8 o'clock at night and finished the middle of the night, 3, 4, 5 o'clock sometimes. The Rebbe would have farbrengens, as you know, you see on the video. These farbrengens lasted for hours. They started about 9 o'clock at night, and they went on until 3. As we know, in the later years, the Rebbe actually gave out dollars, stood online for many years. But this was in those years, and when this happened, 1977, no one expected this because the Rebbe was, like I said, physically very strong. He would go to the Ohel a lot. In those days, he wouldn't really eat. And what happened was, it was Shemini Atzeres. Shemini Atzeres is nice. We have a kafas, there's the dancing. And by the Rebbe, he himself only dances in the circle, the 1st and the 7th. All the others, the Rebbe stands up front, and he sort of directs the singing from the front of the shul, and everybody has their eyes on the Rebbe, and they sing a niggin. So this was one of the middle one hakafas. The Rebbe was up front, he was directing the singing, and then I saw and everybody else saw something which I would hope never ever to see again. Rebbe's face just changed colors to like white, like I never saw anything like that in my life, just white. And he turned around, he sat down and everybody realized something was wrong. They asked everybody to leave, of course. And there were a few doctors in the crowd, so they ran over. They wanted the Rebbe to drink something. The Chabad custom is that we don't drink outside of the sukkah, even on Shmini Atzeres. In many communities, once sukkah is over, on Shmini Atzeres, you eat in the house. Chabad custom is to take it the next day. We don't make a bracha because it's not an obligation. But the Rebbe wouldn't drink any water. And it was the 4th hakafa. So the Rebbe insisted that before he goes to his room, they should do the 7th, all the hakafas. And he went down to the middle of the shul. He danced the hakafa. The Rebbe would dance with his brother-in-law, whose name was called Rashag, Rabbi Gurari. Rabbi Gurari understood what the situation was. So after they turned around 2-3 times, he said that he's exhausted, and it stopped. And then the Rebbe went upstairs. I think they would want the Rebbe to use the elevator, but the Rebbe went up with the staircase. Believe me, the Rebbe knows exactly what a heart attack is and what the consequences are. But as you still see, the Rebbe conducted himself in a different way, a little bit out of the ordinary realm of nature. And again, the Rebbe says he wants to make Kiddush, go into the sukkah. They wanted the Rebbe to go into his room. He should rest. They wanted to examine the Rebbe. He wants to first go into the sukkah, make Kiddush, and only then he will allow the doctors to do something. That's what he did. And of course, when the doctors examined him, they established that the Rebbe just had a heart attack. And they wanted the Rebbe to go to the hospital. And here's where a very big debate began. The Rebbe said he's not going to the hospital. He's staying here. And the doctors insisted, you have to go to the hospital, heart attack. In fact, there were people there who had their own personal heart doctors. They immediately called them, could you come down as an emergency? They came. But when they heard that the Rebbe does not want to go to the hospital, they were very upset. And they said, I can't treat a patient that's not going to the hospital. And they left. The Lubavitcher doctors naturally respected the Rebbe's opinion, but they still were trying to find a way to sort of push that the Rebbe should go to the hospital. Talk to the Rebbe, try to convince him, and different people tried different things. At one point, someone even tried to get the rabbanim, the rabbis of the community, they should give a halachic ruling that he must go to the hospital. But before that person who came with that message opened his mouth, the Rebbe told him not to say what he wants to say. I'm not going to go against Rabbanim, and please leave the room. So that was out. It was the previous Rebbe's, Rebbetzin, always had this woman who worked in the house in times of the previous Rebbe, times of the Rebbetzin. The Rebbe knew her well. She was there. And she was begging the Rebbe to go to the hospital. And she said, if one of your Hasidim would have had a condition like this, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to go to the hospital? The Rebbe said, yeah. So then the Rebbe said, and what would the person do? Would he listen to me? She said, of course. So the Rebbe said, okay, so listen to me now also. I'm not going. Then they tried another thing. They gave the Rebbe a certain injection that when a person, God forbid, has such a thing, they put the person to sleep so the heart should be able to relax. Usually, a person sleeps for many hours, I think, 15 hours they say. And when the Rebbe was sleeping, said, now is our chance. We can just pick the Rebbe up and take him to the hospital. The only person who can give them the okay was the Rebbetzin. So one of the doctors, I heard this from someone who claims he was standing there, that one of the doctors told the Rebbetzin, you're the only one that can allow us to take the Rebbe to the hospital. And the situation is very serious. And if God forbid this happens, he spelled it out like the doctors love to do. If that happens, then you're going to be responsible. Imagine to hear such words. The Rebbetzin was very shook up. And she said, give me a moment. She turned around, she faced the wall. And a moment or two later, she turned around and said, I never, ever did anything different than the will of my husband. I won't do it now. He's not going. That was it. So that also didn't work. Just to understand a little bit how serious it was, Dr. Weiss, who was eventually the doctor who did care for the Rebbe, you can see him speaking on a video. He spoke about what happened. And he said, in my entire career, this is even years later, he spoke, and he said, in my entire career, I never saw such a damaged heart in a living person. That's how he described the situation. 75% of the heart was damaged, and 25% was still healthy and okay. And this was one thing. 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a second heart attack. And the second one, that was the real massive, severe heart attack. And that's when someone thought of Dr. Weiss. Dr. Weiss is a doctor who lives in Chicago. He's a cardiologist, head of the cardiologist department in the hospital. And they called him and said, he had a connection to the Rebbe. Wasn't a chassid, but they said, this is the situation, and nobody's willing to sort of go with the Rebbe's way. Are you willing to come here and just cooperate with what the Rebbe wants? And he said he's willing to come on one condition. What's the condition? The condition is that all the equipment that you have in an ICU, bring it to 770. If you get me those things in 770, I'm coming. I'm coming now. And they got the commitment. There were people who just pulled the strings, money, called the hospital, and within 24 hours, they had all the equipment of a regular ICU in the hospital. And of course, it was Yontiv. He came flying in from Chicago, and he told the Rebbe that he's going to do as the Rebbe wishes. But he was much more respectful, and he took on the responsibility of caring for the Rebbe. Again, one of the things that I heard him say, he once spoke actually at a Machon dinner, and he said that that normally people who have such a kind of an attack, they're usually not even conscious. And if they are conscious, they're totally not capable of, thinking. And here the Rebbe was giving him ideas. In fact, he said the Rebbe was like light years ahead of himself, because the Rebbe was speaking about, they were telling the Rebbe was damage done to the heart, and the Rebbe was speaking about that, can that be corrected? And he was saying no. In fact, there was a doctor, his name was Dr. Lown, he was from Boston, one of the biggest cardiologists in the country. He was the one who invented or discovered the method of when God forbid there's a heart attack, to stop it with electrical, in other words, giving electrical current to the heart, and that helps. So he's a big heart doctor, or heart specialist, came to see the Rebbe and give his opinion about things. This was a little bit later, not when things happened, after things calmed down. And I heard this from someone who said that a relative of his took him to the airport after he visited the Rebbe. And he said that the Rebbe spoke to him about why can't we correct the damage that was done to the 75%, because he told the Rebbe the 25% of the heart have to live with the 75%, without the 75%. The Rebbe said, why can't we get the 75% repaired? And he explained to the Rebbe that the heart is like rubber, which stretches. But once it gets stretched out, it's not rubber anymore. And the Rebbe didn't accept it. So he said, well, the Rebbe doesn't understand what a heart is really all about. And a number of years later, it came out, and this is in the word of medicine, it's known that now there is a way that they can, and that's why Dr. Weiss was saying the Rebbe was light years ahead of himself, a way of regenerating the cells in the heart and correcting the damage that was done. So this was on Shmini Atzeres. Of course, none of us knew all this at the time. We just knew that about a heart attack. We didn't know the condition. We knew that there was 770, and they made a minyan. They were davening in the Rebbe's room, and after Yontiv is over, the Rebbe's custom is that everybody would wash right before Yontiv is over. When you wash, then you're allowed to eat even after sundown. And you extend the Yontiv hours after sundown. So everybody would wash. And the Rebbe usually have a farbrengen for about 6 hours. Usually it starts 6 o'clock, finishes 12. By 12, the Rebbe would give out the wine to everybody, every individual. That was another 3 hours. And would usually end 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now it was not possible. But the Rebbe said that he wants to speak to the Chassidim. Why can't they hook up a microphone in the room, and the Chassidim are downstairs in the shul, and he'll speak? The doctors said that they don't want him to speak because, generally speaking, with a heart patient, it's not healthy to speak. When if you visit someone in the ICU unit, they'll tell you have 5 minutes. Don't spend more than a few minutes there because it's a strain on the heart. And the Rebbe told them how much he wants to speak, and they said, you can't, and they said, yes. They said, no. Finally, they made a deal. And they said, the Rebbe will give you 5 minutes, and if we see any problem with the heart, we'll monitor the heart, and do you agree to stop? The Rebbe said, yeah. So at the end, the Rebbe actually spoke for 20 minutes, and you can hear, when you hear the recording, you can hear the Rebbe speaking. And the Rebbe basically spoke about the same subjects he usually would speak about on this time of the year, but it was sort of condensed. Everything he speaks about it was condensed. But one of the things that stands out is the Rebbe's approach in general is very well known. It's defined by the word l'chatchila riber. Some of you might be familiar with that. L'chatchila riber is Yiddish. Actually, one word is Yiddish, one word is Hebrew. But it's based on a phrase that was said by the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad. And he said like this, that there's a saying in Yiddish, and there's equivalent to that in English, which is, if you can't go under, then you go over. And I say, that's what he used to say, I say that to begin with, just go over. Don't even try to go under. What does it mean? It can mean a lot of things. But generally speaking, it means that if you're trying to do something and you'll see that it's challenging, there's something blocking, something in the way, you keep pushing and you can't push through, then instead of pushing through, just try to go above it, or beat the system, so to speak, go a different route. Just ignore what's going on and do what you have to do. And I say, don't even try to go the other way. L'chatchila, to begin with, just go above it and don't give any substance to whatever it is that's standing in the way. That's the Rebbe's opinion about a lot of things, the Rebbe's approach, how to deal with difficulties, with challenges, of course, within reality. Here, that's how the Rebbe conducted himself. This is something very serious, but nevertheless, the Rebbe did that. And as much as humanly possible, the Rebbe acted in a way to sort of not give substance to the condition. So, for example, his first opening words were that due to a certain situation, he didn't use the word illness, he wouldn't use the word sickness, wouldn't use the word heart attack, due to a certain situation, we're now speaking on a microphone. Normally, the Rebbe wouldn't speak on a microphone because it's still Yontif. So it's a Chag. And because of that, now everybody around the world could participate. In other words, immediately to point out something positive that's coming out of it. And then the Rebbe spoke about the Yantiv, but Simchas Torah and everything else. Also before that, the Rebbe asked the doctors a question. He said, when they give an injection, put in a needle to draw blood, what draws the blood? Is it the needle or is it the vacuum that draws out the blood? So the doctor said the vacuum. So the Rebbe said, in other words, the vacuum brings in new blood, which is new life. So the Rebbe says the fact that there's a vacuum, in other words, tell the Hasidim, I'm not sitting on the chair, I'm not participating, I'm not there, there's a vacuum, but as a result of this, there'll be more, not less. In other words, whenever there's a challenge, there's something blocking, something in the way, ultimately it'll bring even greater things to come out as a result of that. In fact, in Hasidic history, we know that, we'll talk about this tomorrow a little bit, that the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, was arrested. Not because he passed a red light, but because there was a group of people that they were religious Jews, but they were under the impression that Hasidus is a movement that goes against Yiddishkeit. And they saw that the movement is growing rapidly, and tens of thousands of people are joining. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, he was the one who was sort of the main person who was leading the movement. So they actually filed and submitted an accusation against the Alter Rebbe that he's trying to undermine the government. He wants to create a revolution against the Tsar, and they arrested him. And they arrested him with the intention to execute him. Miraculously, the Alter Rebbe was saved. So the Alter Rebbe said this, and every Rebbe in every generation said the same thing, that yes, it's true that he was arrested and that he was miraculously saved, and he was able to go back to do what he did before, but it wasn't the same. The whole purpose why there was an arrest and why there was something blocking is so that afterwards he would be able to do things even on a much greater, stronger level than he ever did before. And the same with the second Rebbe of Chabad, and the same with the previous Rebbe who was arrested by the communist regime. After he came out of jail, his activities, even though he was physically broken and beaten, but his activities of spreading Yiddishkeit and spreading Chassidus took on a global level, much more than anything was ever done before. So with the Rebbe, we also see that the Rebbe, after this period, people thought, okay, now the Farbrengens will probably stop and things left to be toned down, and the Rebbe would do less. If anything, he did much more, and explained that the whole purpose of the vacuum is that there should actually be more things happening, not less. And there's an explanation in Chassidus why that's going on. It's also interesting when they put that in, when they gave the Rebbe that injection to sleep for 4 hours. So to sleep rather, the Rebbe only slept for 4 hours. Normally people sleep for 15 hours. So they told the Rebbetzin that he only slept for 4 hours. And her reaction was, 4 hours? He never slept so much in his life. Coming from a different place. So that night, the Rebbe spoke. And after he spoke, he said to the doctors, could you please give me the mail that came over Yantiv? And the doctor said, Rabbi, you have to relax. You have to understand this was a heart attack. And it's a very serious heart attack. In order to get the message across, as if the Rebbe doesn't understand, they said, you should know that 75% of cases, it happens again. The Rebbe didn't respond. So he said, Rebbe, did you hear what I said? He said, I heard what you said. You said that in 25% of the cases, it does not happen again. I heard it again. Again, it was as the Rebbe's way of looking at the whole thing, in every way. Believe me, the Rebbe argued with them. At the end, they gave him the Rebbe the letters. The Rebbe said, if you don't give me my letters now, it's going to pile up. And then later I'll have much more work. It'll be much harder. So at the end, they gave the Rebbe the letters. People would get answers to their questions 3 o'clock in the morning because the whole order was totally different. 770 for the next month became like a little hospital, which means the upstairs was, well, no one went upstairs. The doctors were there. They had all the equipment there that you have in an ICU. And they were, and the Rebbe did not leave the room until the doctors felt. So this Dr. Weiss, by the way, he had a position in a hospital. He was the head of the cardiology department. He just stopped everything and he was there. At a certain point, the Rebbe told him to go back home, and he put other people in charge. It was a Dr. Resnick that took over, and he was in charge. But one of the things that we saw during when this was happening was that the relationship between a chassid and a rebbe is not only academic. Rebbe is a teacher, and we are students, and he teaches us a lot of things in Torah, in Chassidus, in character traits. But the relationship between Rebbe and a chassid, and the truth is every teacher and student should be a relationship of love, where it's like a father and children. Actually, Rashi says this in Chumash, that a Rebbe is also called a father, and students are also called children. And we say this every day in davening, in the Shema, Vishinantam Levanecha, and you should teach Torah to your children. If you look into Rashi, Rashi says, when it says you should teach your children, it means your students. So students are children. The Rebbe is like a father to us. In fact, that's one of the reasons, even in halacha, that if a miracle happens to a Rebbe, then even their students will celebrate that day. They don't say Tachnon, it's a yonta for them because it happened to their Rebbe. So we saw the love that a Hasidim had for the Rebbe, which was incredible, and the love that the Rebbe had for the Hasidim, because the Rebbe made a condition with the doctors before they even started. I'm not letting you do a thing unless you make a commitment that whatever goes on here and whatever is happening does not go out the outside. The Rebbe didn't want the Hasidim to worry and to be concerned, especially after hearing all the things years later. If we would have heard it then, you could imagine. In fact, the doctors wanted everyone to leave the shul. It was Simchas Torah. And the Rebbe said, no, they should dance. And the doctor said, we think the Rebbe needs peace and quiet. And the Rebbe said, the singing is sweet music to my ears. Let them sing, and for me, it's okay. And basically, the Chassidim was singing in Yiddish. They were saying the words, the Rebbe soll sein gesund. The Rebbe should be well. That was the whole night. In the middle of the night, it changed. How did it change? Based on the Rebbe's principle, which is l'chatchila river, just go above it, and just think positive. Try good with sein good, think positive will be good. So they changed the tune, rather the words to another Rebbe should be gesund. Gesund means should be well. The Rebbe is gesund. The Rebbe is healthy. The Rebbe is well. And they were dancing that for the rest of the night. And the Rebbe wanted that everything that happens in shul on a regular basis, people should go home to their families and they should eat the meal and do what they have to do. And nobody should allow this to disturb them. And like I said, the Rebbe answered people, the letters and their questions. The Rebbe did insisted that he continue. Now, the custom by the Rebbe is that when Yontiv is over, he gives everybody a little bit of wine, makes Havdalah, and from the Havdalah, he gives everybody a little bit of wine. Like I told you, this line takes 3 to 4 hours. Under these circumstances, it's not possible. When a person is, God forbid, sick, and miraculously is, if they're seriously ill, not if you have a cold and a runny nose, but if it's a serious sickness, and you recover, you have an obligation to make a su'udah, to make a feast, a meal, and thank Hashem. Basically, Thanksgiving meal. So what happened was, it was Hanukkah, the 8th day of Hanukkah, and they were davening mincha. No one expected anything. And then the Rebbe said he wants to have a farbrengen now. Everybody ran downstairs to the shul. And all of a sudden, challah appeared and wine appeared. apparently the Rebbe called someone in before. His name was Rabbi J.J. Hecht, Rabbi Yaakov Yehuda Hecht. And he said, I want you to keep a secret. Could you keep a secret? I said, yep. And he said to me, he doesn't want anyone to know this, not the doctors, not the secretaries. He took care of it himself because he obviously knew there'd be pressure not to do it. And the Rebbe said he should prepare, make an order in the bakery. There should be a lot of challah, and he wants to make a meal. And that was the Rebbe's sort of meal of Thanksgiving. It was on Hanukkah. At the end of that meal, the Rebbe started to distribute wine. Now the Rebbe just started to recover, but what happened was that people didn't want the Rebbe to be standing there for hours. Usually it's a 3-4 hour ordeal. So nobody went over. A few people went over, and after 5 minutes, the line ended. So the Rebbe said, there are fools in this room that think that by not going over to me, they're doing me a favor. No, they'll do me a favor if they do come. And he said something along the line that if Hashem sees that I'm needed, then he'll give me more help, so don't stay back. And then, people started to move. The Rebbe was sort of saying in a humorous way to certain people, so you were one of those fools that you first didn't come. As you know, the Rebbe used to speak in a humorous way to a lot of people. This was Hanukkah. But why are we having this gathering today? Because up until the point of this day, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the Rebbe was in 770 with the doctors, with the machines. And on this day, the doctors discharged the Rebbe from this condition. In other words, at that point, the Rebbe's room was like equivalent to a hospital. And when the doctor discharged you from the hospital, that's a stage in recovery. So therefore, this became the day to celebrate the Rebbe's recovery. So the Rebbe himself did it on the 8th day of Hanukkah. And on that day, the Rebbe gave a whole sikha to explain how the 8th day of Hanukkah is connected to the 8th day of Sukkot, which is Shmini Atzeres, the day that it happened. And showed a comparison, beautiful deep sikha, how here we light 8 candles, and on Hanukkah is 8 candles, and here it was the 8th day of Yontif. And just to tell you one connection that there is, the Gemara says that Beis Shammai has an opinion which we don't follow, and that is instead of lighting the Hanukkah candles the way we do, we should light it differently. The first day, 8 candles. The second day, 7. The third day, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And the last day, 1 candle. And where does he get to say something like that? So he says because on Sukkot, they used to bring a carbon. They used to bring the bulls, 70 bulls were brought as a carbon. But how did they bring the 70 bulls? Not all in one day. The first day, 13. The second day, 12. The third day, 11. The next day, 10. So just like in Sukkot, we go down, in Hanukkah we should also go down. So there you see the connection between the 8 days of Sukkot and the 8 days of Hanukkah. And the Rebbe explained it that way. But the day that we celebrate the Rebbe's miraculous recovery is Rosh Chodesh Kislev, because this is the day that he went home. Nobody knew until the last minute that this is the way it's going to happen. But people heard and they were waiting outside. And from that day on, the Rebbe went home every day. The doctors still were there, and they were still in touch, and they went every single day into the Rebbe's room to make sure that everything's okay. But the Rebbe did not go downstairs to have his usual farbrengen. The first time the Rebbe did that was on Yutas Kislev, which is almost a month later. And also, the Rebbe very much wanted to go to the Ohel. The Rebbe would go to the Ohel twice a month in those days, the 15th and Erev Rosh Chodesh. The doctors said it's too early. Finally, on Hanukkah, they gave the Rebbe the green light that it's okay to go to the Ohel. The Rebbe went to the Ohel and came back and started distributing dollars, Hanukkah geld. And again, nobody was walking over. But this time, the Rebbe noticed that some people were about to walk over and other people were stopping them. And then the Rebbe made an announcement and said, I'm asking nobody should prevent anybody from walking over, and I'm asking people to come. I mean, the line wasn't that long, but I can just tell you that the first line was 10 minutes. The next time the Rebbe gave out wine, it was 30 minutes. The next time it was an hour, and went back to 3-4 hours, just like the good old days, eventually. So the Rebbe's approach was not to give substance. Again, if chas v'shalom anyone has a medical situation, follow what the doctors say. But when I say about substance, I mean in the head, the anxiety, the worry, feeling that I can't do my normal responsibility. These are things that we can overcome if we don't give substance to what's going on, and we follow the doctor's orders, but in our head and our heart, we stay in a positive place. So the one of the things I see we can sort of walk away with when we think about this day is, number one, what I mentioned before, to think about, you can when you go into the story and the details that happen, you see that love between the Chassidim and the Rebbe. And the other thing is that we can learn from this, the Rebbe sort of practices what he preaches, how we should not give substance to a negative situation. And by not giving substance to it, we can overcome it. And everybody has to apply that to themselves in their own personal way. But that's the one thing I think we can really all emulate and follow in our own personal lives, to think positive. There was just someone recently who spoke. He happens to got a little bit famous in the recent days because he was involved on October 7th. He was one of those people who was in the army. Before the army got together on his own, he just literally saved a lot of people's lives by eliminating terrorists. And he was speaking about how the Israeli government should be sitting and thinking, because we do see that, unfortunately, a lot of people lost their lives. But on the other hand, it's pretty miraculous where we were a month ago and where we are now in terms of dealing with our enemies. And he said that the way to approach it is to sit down and say to ourselves, okay, we're ready, victorious, it's all over. Now let's think how we got there. In other words, to think in a positive way, not to be worried and have anxiety about the outcome, but to see the outcome as positive, and to thank Hashem. That I would actually sometimes tell people to make a suda, to make a feast of Thanksgiving, thanking Hashem for the miracle which didn't happen yet. But the thanking Hashem is a certain expression of, I'm confident that Hashem is going to perform the miracle. So let us hope. Unfortunately, this tragedy that just happened on the same day Shmini Atzeres. So let us hope that we'll also see a big miracle there. I think we're already seeing miracles, but we should see the ultimate miracle. Number one, like I said before, the war ends. People don't have to worry about any kind of dangers, and all those that are held hostages come home healthy, and that the ultimate miracle is that Mashiach comes and we're out of this galus. Okay. Hatzlacha, everybody, and have a wonderful week. A wonderful month, rather. What?